And welcome back. This is your man Warrior. This is another patron roster review, and this is Odyssey from Blue Raiders. Now, Odyssey is basically free to play, mostly free to play, has spent almost nothing in the game. Very, very, very little money spent throughout a 2-year period of time. So mostly free to play. Wants me to kind of take a look at arena, ships, and then just a generalized focus. Not a huge push for anything specific, just kind of what makes crystals go. So we're going to go right into arena. And the first thing I notice is no tank. My rule of thumb is no tank equals dropping. No tank equals dropping. You're going to drop regardless, but you're going to drop faster without a tank. It makes you a target. Everybody knows they can just target whoever they want all willy-nilly. They don't have to worry about it. So because of that, you definitely want to get a tank in here. Now, with your CLS lead and Han Solo and Thrawn, those three are amazing and part of the team Titan. The only two you're missing is General Kenobi and R2-D2, who would place Biggs and Wedge. Now, you have a Gear 9 7-star R2-D2. Continue to develop him. Get him up, and his 2 Zetas both are worth it. Numbers crunch first, then combat analysis, because that will be your cleanser for the team. Pretty amazing. But R2-D2, get from Gear 9, work on him, get him to Gear 10, then get a Gear 11. He should be one of your highest priorities. Also, because you have no General Kenobi, I would recommend Obi-Wan Kenobi. He is a phenomenal tank. You have him at Gear 9. Again, this is another Zeta. Now, I would do R2-D2's numbers crunch first, then Devoted Protector, and then move back to R2-D2 for his cleanse. But I would use Obi-Wan. Now, both are Gear 9. You're going to have to get them up to Gear 10 and then Gear 11 for durability. So if you feel like you're dropping more than you should with these 2 characters in the back, then you're going to need to continue to use your existing team until you have these guys geared up high enough. 2 characters from Gear 9 to Gear 10 to make them durable and viable isn't that difficult. You're talking about a maximum of about 6 to 8 pieces of gear max. You should be able to work that out over the next 30 days pretty easily, even with being mostly free to play. So those are the 2 suggestions I make. Obviously R2-D2 and Old Ben for the next 2 Zetas. You are thinking probably, well, if I do that, I lose Biggs and Wedge, 2 massive damage dealers, but you gain massive durability and more control on defense with R2 and Old Ben. And you're looking for control and allow Commander Luke, Han Solo, and Grand Admiral Thrawn to do all the damage for you. You only need those 3 anyway. So that's what I would do in arena. You did mention really quick that you are working on your Imperial Troopers as just kind of a generalized focus, and I think that that's great, except for I wouldn't focus on Magma Trooper or Stormtrooper, not right now anyway. You're free to play basically, and so those 2 characters are going to be a real waste of resources for you. I would focus on the other 5. General Veers, Shore, Death, Snow, and Colonel Stark. Those 5 are all either required in other areas of the game, are needed for ships, or make the team what it is with Imperial Troopers. Those 5 are really the clutch characters you need to develop. So I would drop Magma Trooper and Stormtrooper, and I would just continue, like you already are, continue to develop the Imperial Troopers. This will help you with territory wars, battles, even arena. If you run into those Night Sister teams you're having trouble with, you can bring these Imperial Troopers in and just work right through them. So definitely continue to focus on them. Now, it's hard for me to tell you to work on your Imperial Troopers. I know you're already doing it without at least mentioning Resistance. They're equally as good, if not better. They're actually better because of the heroic AAT tank raid, but they're equally as good in every other area of the game. And so you definitely need to continue to develop your Resistance. The good news is most of your Resistance is already at 7 stars, so it's mostly just farming for gear that you're going to want to do. And really the character that sticks out on stars is Resistance Trooper, and he is a trooper. He's amazing. He's an MVP for the heroic AAT raids and excellent for a Resistance team. So I would definitely continue to gear these characters up and focus on getting Resistance Troopers stars up. Now, in glancing in your Rebels, because I was looking to try and find some alternate replacements, I did notice your Phoenix and they look okay. But I noticed down at the bottom you have Chirrut and Baze both at 4 and 5 stars respectively, and Chirrut Imwe is at 7, and so is Baze for gear level. These two characters not only are required for the Rogue One nodes and territory battles, and they're really good rebels and whatnot, these two guys are going to be needed in a lot of different places in the game, and you have Jyn Erso almost at 7 stars, and K2SO and Cassian at 7 stars already. So really, the last piece of this Rebel Rogue One puzzle is going to be Chirrut Imwe and Baze Malbus, and you're trying to get me to shore up things for generalized focus for specifically territory battles and things like that. So the 4 rebels that you see right here that I would focus on to star specifically would be Chirrut, Baze, Captain Han Solo, and Jyn Erso. Go for their stars, and then once you have their stars, you can then start to farm them for gear. Don't stress about doing it fast, and these guys are kind of back burner projects, or what I call side projects. I would just get them up to par because they're absolutely critical in many, many, many areas of the game. And lastly, you have a decent team of bounty hunters / scoundrels, but for the bounty hunter node on darkside territory battles, you do need a 5th player, so I would recommend Greedo. He's got good synergy with your Zam Wessel, who you already have 7 stars, so go ahead and get his 7th star. Again, this is a side project, not somebody you want to drop everything for. That would be for regular arena or ships arena. Those are the characters that become your top priority. In your favorites list, have 2 rows of characters. Have the top row, anyone who is a pilot or part of an arena team, as your first priority, and then the second row, those are your side projects, characters you're not as focused on, but they're in your favorites, so you're reminded every day that they're the ones that you're trying to gear and star up as well. I would never do more than 2 rows. It's just too much to focus on and too much to look at. Some people, in fact, need to go to 1 row of favorites just to make sure they actually complete what it is they're putting in their favorites. Now in ships, Odyssey, there's a reason why you're at 880, and it's not to be disrespectful, but you've only done probably about 100 fleet battles, maybe a couple hundred, but you've only won 60, which tells me that fleet ships have not been a priority in the past. But you asked for ship suggestions, and so that means it is important now, which means you are going to have to turn the tide, and that's going to be hard, but not impossible. So you need to know your end goal, what you're shooting for ship-wise, so you can have a good end-game team. Now you're using the Executrix, and that is a phenomenal ship, even to end game. Many people use it in lieu of the Chimera still to this day, so I would continue to use it. I would use the TIE Advanced, which you're using right now, and Biggs, which you're using right now, but I would then focus on these next 3 ships, which is the First Order TIE Fighter on the top left, the Imperial TIE Fighter right next to it, and below the Umbaran Starfighter. Now, those 3 ships are going to bring about a lot of damage and durability to the Executrix. Before I went to Chimera, this was the team lineup I used: the First Order TIE Fighter, the Imperial TIE Fighter, and the Umbaran Starfighter. It really, with Biggs and the Umbaran Starfighter side by side, and then the 3 TIEs, the TIE Advanced, First Order's TIE Fighter, and the Imperial TIE Fighter, those 3 TIE Fighters, it really, really chews up competition. Now, I have to tell you, if you're going to climb in ships, you're going to have to do all 5 battles every day for a while so you can get up there. But you're also going to have to continue to develop both the pilot and the ship, because the ship is only as good as the pilot you're bringing in. So keep that in mind. Now, there is another ship that I would recommend, and that is the TIE Reaper. Eventually, the TIE Reaper will replace the Umbaran Starfighter. So for now, use the Umbaran Starfighter in your first 5, but eventually you will replace it with the TIE Reaper in your first 5. The TIE Reaper is there, and its design is to slow the opponent's capital ship down while speeding your capital ship up. It works wonders. He has a ability to regenerate protection on itself and another ship. It has its ability to dispel an opponent's ship or take away their taunt, and he can even put offense down, so you can strategically target their mass damage dealer like a First Order TIE Pilot to make sure that that First Order TIE Pilot isn't hitting as hard as he could. So this is an end-game character or ship that you're going to want to make sure you focus on and farm, and surprisingly, you have the characters, because they're Imperial Imperial Troopers, Death Trooper, and Shore Trooper to Gear 8, which is awesome. Keep developing them like is part of your plan. And you've got the ship 3 stars, which technically makes it viable. Where you're sitting at almost 900, you probably could put this in place of the Umbaran now, but because your Umbaran's a little tankier, I would probably go ahead and go with it in your front 5. Now, for the backup, this isn't going to surprise anyone, probably. I would use Slave 1. And of course, your Scimitar. Now, with Scimitar and Slave 1, I'd probably use Scimitar in first and then Slave 1. And then lastly, I would bring in a damage dealer. And the only real damage dealer you have near the top that we haven't discussed is actually Wedge Antilles. He does awesome as a backup on a target lock team because he can deal damage over time, which is really, really cool. Plus, if they're target locked, he will deal 10% additional damage for every detrimental effect. That includes the damage over times, and that includes the target lock or any other buff immunity or anything that you have applied. On his basic, it deals damage, and in addition, it inflicts 2 damage over time effects on a critical hit. So if he crits, he's going to put dots over their head, and every one of those is going to allow for his eyes on the breach to do more and more damage. So you definitely want to use his basic, and that's how the AI uses him. The AI brings him in, he uses his basic, and then he will use his special. So on offense, he's going to be a great back. All right, Odyssey, I hope this helps focus you a little bit more on Arena. Yes, continue to work on your Imperial Troopers. That's good, not just for Arena, but for other areas like Territory Wars and Battles. Ships look pretty good, but you're going to have to focus on that TIE Reaper and the Umbaran and the TIEs, like the First Order TIE Pilot and an Imperial TIE Fighter. And yes, you can use your Scimitar, Slave 1, and Wedge. You want to develop Arena and Pilots. Those are your most important. And then all the other side projects I mentioned, like Greedo, Finishing Resistance, Imperial Troopers, and Chirrut and Baze, those characters you can kind of work as side projects while you develop those main. I hope this helps you. I'm glad as a free-to-play you're focused highly on what to do and how to do it. You got to spend more time in ships, bro. As always, keep your gaming on. Warrior, out.